Okay friends, one of the first things we have to do to get started on our job is to safely raise and support the front of the truck so the wheels are off the ground. After that, remove all 5 of your lug nuts and then remove the wheel. Now the next thing we're going to have to do is remove our mounting pins that hold the pads to the caliper itself. It's very common for these pins to be stuck inside the caliper, so I'm just going to spray it with some penetrant. After that, we want to remove this clip that comes along the back side here. Now the next thing we want to do is pay attention to this clip right along here. Pay attention to the direction that it's in especially. You want to make sure that you have this little flippy-do so it's facing up and away from the rotor when it comes time for the install. You also have these little flips right here. They sit up on top of the brake pads. To get this out, I'm just going to come in between the clip and the brake pad and then pop that right out of there. This one right here, same thing. Now this can move around. The next thing we have to do is start driving both of these pins out of the caliper. There's one. I'm going to remove this mounting bolt right here, and then we'll come down here and remove the caliper bracket as well. So we have more slack on our ABS wire. I'm just going to go ahead and pop this clip right here. Now remove your 2 caliper bolts. Bolts out of there. Let's go ahead and slide the caliper off of here. And now when we hang this, we want to make sure that we hang it so it's putting no pressure on the flex hose or on the ABS wire. Perfect. Now let's get our pads out of here. With the pads out of there, you want to pay attention to the areas along the pistons where the boots ride. If you see any moisture coming out from around those areas, well then you know you need to replace your caliper. Assuming they look good, let's go ahead and press back our pistons. Something to pay attention to though, is if you press in on this one's going to come out. You press in on this one, vice versa. And of course the same for the other side. Typically when you do these, you want to push all 4 back at the same time using a tool that looks like this. Just slide this in between all 4 of those pistons. Make sure it's nice and level, and then we'll start pushing them all back at the same time. Just go ahead and put one of these lug nuts on here just to hold this from falling off. What you're probably going to notice is I have my axle nut and my cover off for this right here. That's for another job that I'm doing. You don't necessarily need to remove the axle nut or this cover to do the brake job. I'm just going to use a bolt, come right in between this area here. We'll start it in, screw it in. That's going to press up against the wheel bearing and remove the rotor. Now the next thing we're going to want to do is take a nice wire brush and we're going to clean up the mating surface on our hub so when we put on the brand new rotor, it has a clean surface to mate to. Next, we're going to apply some copper never-sees along the mating area of the hub. Now it's time to get the rotor on there. I'm just going to take one of these lug nuts, we'll bottom it out so the rotor can't move around on us. Now let's shift our attention to the caliper itself. I want to go ahead and clean up some areas on this, essentially everywhere where the pad's going to hit. You have this area right along here, right along there, and then of course the same down along this area. Clean all 4 of those corners. Once you have all 4 of those corners clean, go ahead and clean up this area as well. Make sure you don't have any large chunks of anything that could potentially hit up against the rotor. Okay. Re-inspect your caliper pistons. Once again, you want to make sure you don't have any fluid around those areas. And now let's grab a little bit of caliper grease, and we're going to come along all those areas that we just cleaned up. Right along here, there, and then of course the same on the bottom area there. You don't want to apply too much, just enough to apply a little bit of lubricant. And let's do the pistons now. Now let's take that caliper. We're just going to slide it right on over the rotor, being careful not to get any of our grease on the rotor braking surface. Start in both of our mounting bolts for it. We'll snug them up. Now let's torque this to 79 foot-pounds. Do the same to the other one. Now the next thing we're going to want to do is put these pins back in, but of course you're going to want to make sure you clean them up. Get off any of this rust or debris that happens to be on it, so that way there the pads can move around freely. Okay, so I cleaned up both of my pins. Now the next thing I want to do is grab onto my pads. If you look at your pads, you're going to find that 2 of them in your package have this wear indicator on them right here. Compare the pads to your original pads and make sure that the wear indicator is facing on the same direction. Essentially, you want this to be the inner pad, and you want that wear indicator to be facing down. Now I'm going to start by installing the outer pad. That's the one without the wear indicator. I'm just going to carefully slide it right in here. Now let's do the same to the inner pad. The next thing that we want to do is get ready to put our pin in, but also we want to make sure that we have this clip right here. I'm going to start by putting the pin in through the outside so it starts coming through like this. Now with this clip right here, we want to make sure that we have these ears facing up and away from the rotor. So now I'm just going to take this, I'm going to put the pin right through this ear right here, slide it on through, put it through the other ear, and then slide that all the way through the other side of the caliper. Now at this point, you can grab onto these ears right here. I'm just going to pop that right in there, and then make sure that the ear sits up and over the outside of the pad there. We'll do the same to the other one. There we are. Now you just want to make sure that this tab is far enough away from your rotor. If it isn't, just carefully grab onto it, give it a nice tug, and draw it away. Once you're sure you have plenty of clearance along this area, go ahead and put in the lower pin as well. Okay, we got that through there. Now it's going to be time for this clip right here. Now for this clip, what you want to do is you have this little hooky-doo facing towards you. So I'm just going to take this ear, slide it down and into the pin right here. Do the same for this other one. You might need to spin it. Once you have them both in there, just go ahead and take this clip and then slide it into the hole on the caliper. That's going to help make sure that it's locked in, and then just double check to make sure that your pins can't fall out. Now let's get this back on here. Resecure that ABS wire. Let's get the wheel on here. Start all of our lug nuts, get the wheel on the ground, and then we'll torque the wheel to manufacturer's specifications. Now with your wheel, so it's just barely touching the ground, we're going to go ahead and torque these wheels. To torque the wheels, there's going to be 2 options depending on what type of wheel you have. If you have aluminum, like I have here, you're going to torque those to 97 foot-pounds. If you have the steel wheels, you're going to torque those lug nuts to 154. Torqued. Okay friends, we got the brake job all done. What's left to do now? Go ahead and pump up your brake pedal and then take it for a road test.